How's it going, everybody? RazingHel here, and welcome back to our playthrough of the military campaign for Stronghold 3. Today we're on mission number 8, the Sultan.
It was a good win, at a time when we needed one. Silverback escaped, retreated, cowardice coming before honor, just like his father. The Marshland Rangers were formidable fighters, their skills amongst the best I had ever seen. Blackstaff was a fine general as well, capable and powerful. I asked him to join us, to be my right hand for the battles that were coming. He was shocked. With my reputation, he asked. I told him that I didn't care about what had happened before. What he did going forward was all that counted. We left that morning, abandoning Blackstaff's keep for the eastern shoreline so that we might find the Sultan. We saw him before we even saw his city. We explained who we were. He explained what had happened to him. He came from the eastern lands. Prosperous at home, he was driven out by the jackal. So he took his belongings, his family, his wealth, and he sailed for here. He brought money to the area, picked up the people's spirits. It wasn't a rich area when he arrived, but he helped the people turn their fortunes around, setting up trade routes overseas. He used his ship to sell the wares made here to other countries, and he imported their goods just as easily. Then Greytail came, the second son of the rat. He heard about the Sultan's good deeds and decided to turn them to his advantage. He invaded the city. He killed all the Sultan's most trusted men, stole the city's resources. He turned the Sultan's prize ship into a slave boat, running those same trade routes that the Sultan established, only now with a far more insidious cargo. The Sultan himself was banned from the city that he helped to grow, relegated to the wilds, forced to camp until he could find a way to rescue his family. The Sultan told us that he couldn't offer an army, but if we found a way to help him, to free his wife and children, to stop Greytail's abuse, he would help us buy war equipment from his sources so that we could take down the jackal that much quicker. He had no men to use the weapons that he used to sell. All he knew is that Greytail never discovered where he used to keep his stockpile of weapons. I told him that we had enough soldiers to take the city back, and if they didn't know how to work these machines, they would learn on the job. He has given us to break into Greytail's castle and rescue the Sultan's family.
Okay, so we have to capture the keep here, basically, and of course we're playing it on the hardest difficulty. Let's get started.
I like the Sultan, sire, and it's a sad tale about his family. I do hope we can help him. The Sultan has put some siege equipment at our disposal, sire. Some mantlets will protect our troops from enemy fire, whilst those catapults will be just the job for cracking that outer wall, my lord.
Okay, so I think it's worth noting here that this commentary is done in post. I actually played and recorded this mission beforehand because I thought I could concentrate better on the mission at hand if I didn't have to think about commentating over it. So what's going on here, I went ahead and deleted the siege camp that was provided at the start of this scenario because it simply provides me with no function. I don't have any gold and I couldn't recruit any additional siege equipment from it. Here I'm using the catapults to destroy those warhound cages to make sure that they don't leave, basically, and then attack my troops. I think it would be interesting to give the player some choice and allow them to recruit the siege equipment from the camp. I think that would add some nice dynamics to this mission, but I can understand that it could potentially be overpowered. In this mission, we're given like 3 catapults and a battering ram. That's like the extent of our siege equipment, aside from the mantlets. And this is based on the difficulty you play the mission on. If you play the mission on easier difficulties, you'll get more siege equipment for sure, and more troops as well. So this is the hardest difficulty, of course, so we have to be a little bit more careful here. And I'm moving these peasants along to search for traps that are laid out in this area, so that way when I move my more valuable troops through there, they won't be killed by those traps. These are armed peasants, which are basically expendable. They're the cannon fodder of Stronghold 3. And you might notice there is a mantlet firing upon those troops. I believe in runs past, I've had it where those troops actually got hit by the mantlets and the mangonel, the tower mangonel completely wiped out. But we did a pretty good job this game, and maybe 3 of them died altogether. So here, the next course of action, let's call it, is to group up about half of my archers with the mantlets. And the mantlets are going to defend or protect the archers, obviously, from the enemy archers that might be firing on them. But we still have to be careful because the enemy mangonel can still do a lot of damage if it hits this group of archers. So like basically anytime we go over that little red line, the enemy mangonel will start firing at us. And so that's basically our first course of action, is to do everything and anything in our power to remove the mangonel, because otherwise it's going to cause huge casualties to our army as we approach the castle. But the thing is that if you keep moving, it's very hard for it to hit you, and that's generally what I did here to avoid the rocks. In addition to this, you might notice the troops in Stronghold 3. Yeah, there are pluses and minuses here, and I think we'll go into that in a bit more detail later on. But here we go, approaching the wall, and once we get close enough to this wall, we don't even have to worry about being fired upon by the mangonel or the archers on that wall there. So I believe there's one archer firing at me right now, but then I went ahead and just moved some of these some of the shields, the mantlets, closer to the wall, and they're out of range of my archers, or the archers on the walls. And then I just took the archers and used them to target the wall, and the archers are going to bring the wall down themselves. And here is the keep, of course, that we have to capture. That's our objective there. And these are the defenses that we have to get past. I was just rotating around here to do sort of a bird's eye view to give you a better idea of what this mission entailed. So unlike games that came before Stronghold 3, Stronghold Legends and Stronghold 2 in particular, where it was not possible to pretty much attack any walls with standard troops, Stronghold 3 apparently went back on that a little bit and made it a bit more like the classic Stronghold games, and you can actually tear down walls with archers. The archers will get their little knives out and just hack away at the wall, at a stone wall, until it falls. And while I can understand that being a little bit questionable when you're doing it against the stone wall, I do think Stronghold 2 should have allowed that against wooden walls. I have been playing Stronghold 2 recently, and I realized you can't actually melee wooden walls. So here we go, trying to get our units into position to fire at the enemy archers on the walls there. And you'll notice that, unlike previous Stronghold games, the mangonel actually does have a limitation in the range it can fire. It can't fire at close range, so that makes it very desirable to get close to it to prevent it from doing you damage. Another great thing that I kind of came to appreciate about Stronghold 3, believe it or not, over Stronghold 2, there are a couple of really important things here. For one, I can double click to select all of a certain troop type, double left click. So in other words, if I want to select all of my men-at-arms here, I just double click one of them and it immediately selects all of the men-at-arms that are available there on the map. I think it's on the map, or is it just in the view? I think it's on the map. And this is really incredibly helpful to me, and it's something that I couldn't do in Stronghold 2. I've been playing Stronghold 2 recently as well, obviously, and that's probably one of my biggest gripes about Stronghold 2 is how difficult it is just to double-click to select. You really can't do it at all. I think you're supposed to be able to do it, but maybe this involves the change that Firefly made in how units are moved or something, but it doesn't work quite right. So that's like one huge improvement of Stronghold 3 over Stronghold 2. Another improvement that I came to appreciate was the fact that units in Stronghold 3 actually kind of hold their formations. So you might recall, let's interrupt this with talking about the catapults here. The reason I brought these catapults in was with the intention of actually removing the rolling logs that are mounted to the side of that wall, because we don't want to lose our troops when we walk past that. And of course, if we walk past them without removing them first removing them from the wall, basically, we're going to end up in a situation where all of our troops are pretty much wiped out, because unlike in former Stronghold games, the rolling logs in Stronghold 3 are very deadly. But getting back to the point about keeping formations, this was something that I also noticed in Stronghold 2 is units do a very poor job of actually maintaining their formation when in motion. So you can tell them to like move to column, for example, basically spread out so they take less collateral damage. But you'll notice that when actually put into practice, when actually marching across the field, they'll all tend to bunch up in one small area anyway, which pretty much defeats the point of a lot of those formations. Stronghold 2 also limited you in terms of how you can actually position your troops. So there was no ability to actually hold down the right mouse button and then drag the arrow in the direction you wanted your troops to face. So I know a lot of people give Stronghold 3 grief, and rightfully so. There are a lot of bugs in the game yet. But by and large, you know, just the quality of life improvements made here when it comes to managing troops. If it wasn't for the fact that his troops were so janky in this game, it would be, you know, leagues above what Stronghold 2 currently has. But yeah, unfortunately, it was a little bit let down. Like Stronghold 3 has its own unit bug problems. So here we go. Finished removing the logs from the wall. Basically just removed the entire wall as well, even though it wasn't absolutely necessary. And yeah, as you can see here, we can actually control their formations, you know, what direction it is. And as you see, like when they're marching, the units do a fairly good job of actually maintaining that distance from one another. I mean, it's not perfect, but it is better than what you'll see in Stronghold 2. And Stronghold 3 is kind of like a spiritual sequel to Stronghold 1, I suppose. Stronghold 2 exists in this very weird limbo area. And, you know, its story is very disconnected from pretty much the rest of the Stronghold franchise. But the idea here is that I'm just getting my troops lined up, and we're going to be sending in the armed peasants first to act as bait out the rolling logs that are mounted on the walls up above. I know I removed some of them, but I couldn't remove the ones that are further up on the wall. And then we'll also bring up our archers with the mantlets. The mantlets are hopefully going to protect what remains of our archers. Interestingly enough, we really don't need the battering ram. And that's like one questionable thing about the balancing in Stronghold 3 is why is the battering ram so much less useful than just taking armed peasants and wailing away on walls? So that was a little bit of a disappointment to me. If you notice brief jumps, like jump cuts in here, it's because I cut out the parts where I saved the game. I didn't have to reload, believe it or not, but in the past runs I have had to reload it, so that's why I continued to save it in this one, sort of as a force of habit. So here we go, armed peasants up front, and there are about 3, I think there are 3 exactly, rolling log things, and you'll notice they'll just wipe out everything immediately. The logs do. And you have to be very careful around them because they have, like, even when they're just sitting on the ground, when they're not rolling anymore, they do have some sort of area of effect applied to them. That means even if you get close to them, your entire army can just be instantly wiped out. Like, I mean, these things are ridiculously deadly in Stronghold 3, especially compared to Stronghold 2. Like, once again, we're going to make this comparison because I've been recently playing Stronghold 2. Stronghold 2, I could roll a whole bunch of logs into a bunch of Viking, like, warlords or something. They'd get knocked back and maybe 10% of their health would be lost. And, you know, you compare that to Stronghold 3, where it just literally wipes out your entire army the minute one log touches one of the soldiers. There's a pretty big difference there. And I think it might actually come down to like a lack of time to actually polish the Stronghold 3 experience more so than an intended effect. So obviously, right there goes another bunch of logs skidding down the mountainside. Those physics, yo. And here is where we just go ahead and tear down the walls. Now you might think, you have catapults. We should use catapults to tear down the walls. No, do not do that. Because the catapults have such ridiculous splash damage that you end up doing more damage to your troops that way. And then I decided, like, hey, here's the battering ram. Let's just put that to use by sending it over there to the gatehouse. But first we're doing with the archers here. I'm not removing all the archers, just the ones that can easily fire on me from here. I thought I sent the battering ram to the gatehouse. Maybe that was in a previous run. There, as you can see, the rolling log tray or holder fell off the walls, which means that it won't automatically replenish anymore. And basically assures us that we're going to be pretty safe standing there and tearing down the wall. No, apparently I didn't use the battering ram in this one. That was a previous one. I guess I had learned my lesson, because believe me, the battering ram is utterly worthless. By the time I got through the wall with my men-at-arms tearing away at it, the battering ram had like maybe 50% of the gatehouse down. It's like, it's terrible. It was just terrible. And you know, you think about it, gatehouses are generally seen as the weak spot in a lot of castle defenses. That's why you have like a drawbridge on it and stuff. So there seems to be a balancing problem there. Yeah, but we have quite a bit of our army left. Like, this was not a close call by any means. So from here on, though, since those men-at-arms have, you know, each of them have a deadly throwing spear, I wanted to make sure that I wouldn't lose any more troops than necessary. So we're taking them out at range, and it's not a huge range. Like, the men-at-arms have a pretty ridiculously long range for their throwing spears. It's very close to the range of an archer, so if you're a little bit careless with your archers are actually going to get hit by men-at-arms throwing their spears. But then all we have to do is capture the keep. So of course I'm sending the men-at-arms to march towards the keep, and then we're using the archers here to take out those last few men-at-arms there that are still stationed outside the keep. There are a couple of archers on top of the keep, but it's really not going to be an issue whatsoever. This part was relatively easy. And this is the best strategy that I've found so far, basically. The first time I played it, I didn't remove the mangonel, and that was a huge mistake. I think I had to play it on easy, and I barely scraped by, so removing the mangonel was absolutely critical to our success in this one.
The Sultan's family have been found, my liege. They are safe and well. We are victorious, sire.
And that's basically victory. So, as you can see, there's my score. Going through some of this stuff, but I think that pretty much does it for this episode. So thank you very much for watching, as always, and I hope to see you next time.